In this video, I'd like to show how to create a new model, how to add tools from your geoprocessing tools to your model, how to change the names of outputs in your model, and how to create and work with parameters. So first off, I'm going to come within my project to my toolbox, right-click, and add a new model. And by default, it's named Model 1. And if I added more models, it would continue to rename these as Model 2, Model 3, but you can give them a specific name as you go and select Save As. From within Model 1, let's go ahead and add tools as if we were going to generate our watershed model. The first thing I would probably want to do is give myself a digital elevation model to work from. So I'm going to choose this 12-mile raster and drag it out onto the screen. Now, keep in mind that a model, well, we are computing a model specifically for 12-mile. If I make it a parameter, this model becomes a pattern of tools that can be duplicated with other digital elevation models or other watersheds in other areas. Once I have my data on to my model, I'm ready to start adding tools. I'm going to come to geoprocessing and search for the tools that I'd like. The first tool I need is fill. Once I find fill, I just simply drag it out onto the screen. Now, I could begin connecting this, or I could add a whole number of tools that I know I will need, like flow direction, flow accumulation. And after I've added all of my tools, I can simply click on one of my oval shapes, which is a data set, and pull an arrow into a rectangle, which is a tool. It asks me what this should be, and I'm going to say this is your input surface raster. Now, if I wanted to change other parameters within this tool, I simply double click on the fill tool. I can look at different properties that would apply. Most of these will, by default, work out for me. Now, let's see, from fill, I need to come into flow direction, so I'm just going to pull an arrow. This is my input surface raster. My flow direction tool has two outputs. This output drop raster you don't need to worry about. Next, I'll come into flow accumulation. And for flow accumulation, this is our input flow direction raster. And so I tell it what it is. The next tool I'm going to need is raster calculator. So I'm going to drag it out onto the screen. And inside of our raster calculator, I'm going to connect my output accumulation into my raster calculator. But it doesn't color itself, meaning it's incomplete. It's not able to run based on the information it has. Let me double click on raster calculator. Here I'm able to have it make a judgment based on some expression or be able to do some algebra on my raster grid. I'm going to come and say, let's look at our output accumulation raster, which is here. I'm going to double click, and I am going to tell it to make a stream anywhere the output accumulation raster is greater than, and here's where I get to put in a number. I could say 20,000. And now that tool is ready to execute. If I want to make this adjustable, I'm going to add a variable, which I don't want it to be a string. There's a lot of different variable types. I think the most appropriate here would be a long, which is a way to store integers. I'm going to click OK, and I'm first going to rename this and call it minimum flow accumulation for stream. And now I'm going to double click on this, give it a default value of 20,000. Oops. which will be able to be modified, and I'm going to add it into my raster calculator. Let me come and get rid of 20,000, and I'm going to find my variable minimum flow accumulation and double click on it. So I'm going to say that the output needs to be bigger than minimum flow accumulation. And I'm going to rename that one more time. I just know that that word for is a specific word in terms of how it would be viewed. Okay, so now the raster calculator is going to look for anything bigger than whatever this value is, in this case 20,000. The next thing I need to add is raster to polyline. Next thing I need to add is feature vertices to points. Which is going to take the end of these lines and make them vertices. The next tool I need is the Watershed tool. And the Watershed tool is also looking for the output to the flow direction raster. And notice that it does a D8 flow direction. And then the last thing we need is raster to polygon. Our Watershed tool is going to output polygons, well, going to output a raster grid of each watershed. We want to show them as polygons. Once I have this, my model is now complete. It looks like a disarrayed mess, and so if you want, you can come and click Auto Layout, and it'll organize it into something that's a little more sequential and visible left to right. Before I'm done, this tool now, if I go to run it, I can save it, come to my catalog, and double click on Model 1. There's no inputs. There's no way to save an output. I would just be able to run it and nothing would come onto my map. I need to right click on each one of these and make them a parameter to be able to change what the input is. I likewise want the flow accumulation to be a parameter. I think we also decided we wanted our streams to be a parameter. And then likewise our watersheds to be a parameter. If I save this now and come to my catalog and open up Model 1, each of these is now visible. Now notice the first one is named 12-mile raster, the next is named minimum flow accumulation, the next is named output polyline, next is output polygon. Let's go ahead and rename these. And let's call this not output polygon, but let's call it watershed areas. And let's call our output polylines streams. And let's call 12-mile raster, even though that is the raster that we used, let's call this input data set as input raster DEM. And now I'm going to save again. Come back to my catalog and click on Model 1. And now it asks me, what's your input raster DEM? What's your minimum flow accumulation? Where do you want to save your streams? Where do you want to save your watershed areas? And I'm able to run this tool. Now, I would encourage you, as you create your model, to look at a few other things. I think it would be of value to look at what the output to a flow direction tool is. So make it a parameter, have it be an output. Likewise, the flow accumulation raster is very interesting to see what the output looks like and what each value in each cell represents. You can likewise run this model from within the modeling window by clicking Run, and it'll execute each individual step and save each individual output, but it's slow. You're much quicker if you run it from your catalog and from your toolbox. I'm going to save this model. I hope this helps you get started and gives you an idea on how to generate your watershed model. Thank you.